it's Bobby, and I want to share with you my Christmas candle sugar cookie. And these are actually gluten-free and made with a very light Bertolli olive oil, and I'll be giving that recipe. So I believe that's lactose-free as well. But I'm going to show you how I made this cookie. We have quite a few mediums going on. We have the royal icing. We'll have a two-tone royal icing. We have brush embroidery, and then we have some gumpaste little 5-blossom flowers. So I'm going to show you how I did this. Alright, so let's begin. The first thing we're going to start with is our candles. And it's actually done with scroll piping. And it's a number 43 PME tip. And what I have done is on opposite sides, so the side that my seam of my bag is on and the side opposite of it, I have filled with the red. And then in the middle is white. So we're just going to kind of make a candle and bring it a little bit broader down towards the bottom here. And I'm going to use my scriber just to gently nudge him over a little bit. I'm not really worried about this bottom part because you're not going to see it. So we're going to bring in our second one. Clean my tip. Same kind of action. You're going to start with a light pressure and go around. And then get a little bit heavier. As we come to the bottom of our candle. And just end on the down. And then the same thing over on this side. We're going to start, go around, very light. They're tapered candles, so we want them to be thinner on the top than they are on the bottom. And just add a little bit more pressure in. Just a nice rope round action. Alright, so we have our candles. Now I'm going to take a little bit of this sunflower petal dust and a nice soft round brush. And all I'm doing is I'm making a background for my flame. So we're just going to make just a little bit of a yellow. It doesn't have to be perfect, kind of be an oblong. It's just to make the highlight for your flame. I'm going to close that up. And then we're going to go in with a number 2 medium consistency royal icing. And we're going to do a teardrop. So we're going to come out with a nice bulbous bow and pull it up to look like part of the flame. We're going to do it again. And pull it up. And the consistency for my candle is a rub down off peak consistency. Now we're going to go in with a almost soft peak number 2 and kind of do like a little teeny S scroll inside of the yellow. And you want to make sure to do this while your yellow icing is still wet. And that just kind of gives you the look of the flame, because the flame is 2 different colors. So now that we've done that, we're going to go do our bark. Or our branch, not our bark. So I'm going to start down here. I'm going to kind of round this out to make it look like a tree trunk. And I'm just kind of doing a rope round motion to bring it in. Now the part of the branch that isn't going to be really seen is under these candles. So I'm going to work fairly a little bit faster. I'm not too worried about how that looks. As I come out here, I'm going to make a much lighter pressure, that didn't sound like I know the English language. And we're just going to kind of wiggle it. Just do kind of a M or W motion, just to kind of make it look like it's a tree bark. I might have done that a little bit more than I wanted, so you want to kind of bring it out a little bit more. Something for your hollyberry leaves, and your holly berries to be stuck on too. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. Maybe bring a little piece of it out this way. And you can do however you want this to be. It's your tree, or your trunk, should I say. Just make sure that you can get your leaves to fit in there. And I'm going to kind of scooch this a little bit. I don't think it looks... Actually, it's wet enough I can pick it up. It's going to leave a little brown mark, but I'm going to be okay because I'm going to follow that. I just want it to have a little bit more of a movement. Branches kind of are squiggly little things, aren't they? And now we have our branch. And the other thing I'm going to do is, with a very lightly dampened brush, I'm going to kind of go in here and smash this down just a tad to make it look like it's the cut bottom of a branch. So the leaves you can pretty much just do by hand. A hollyberry kind of comes out at a ziggle. Did I say ziggle? A zigzag. And you want to use a nice rub down off-peak consistency. And we're just going to brush embroider those in. I went back and forth on whether I wanted to use a leaf tip and make them stand out, or I wanted to brush embroidery them. And I ended up coming up with the conclusion to just brush embroidery them because the flowers are going to stand out, and I didn't want too much standing out on this tiny cookie. So there's one leaf. And I have a brush embroidery video completely on exactly what I'm doing here. It's a 1920 clock, if you need a refresher on that. But pretty much it's just the same as any time that you're brush embroidering. You're making a nice thick squiggly line. And when I say squiggly line, you want to kind of zigzag your line so that you can bring in your icing without ruining the outside of your line. Now the difference between this brush embroidery and the ones that I normally do is normally I will leave a little bit of opening so that you can see the back part of my foreground. In this case it would be this this fondant that I'm working on. But because it is a hollyberry leaf, and hollyberry leaves are fairly dark, I decided to fill it in as much as possible. If I have a little bit of fondant showing, I'm not going to stress about it. I can always add in a vein of royal icing in green later, maybe a little bit darker. But for the most part, I want to cover as much as I can. So for the candles and the branch with twigs, or the trunk with twigs, you are doing scroll work. You're not over piping, but you're doing the beginning of scroll work. And rope motions and scratch piping and pressure piping. And what I mean by pressure piping, like when I did the candle, I started with less pressure at the top and then went more towards the bottom. With the tree trunk here, or the bark, I went much thicker at the part that's holding the candles are sitting on, and much less with the twigs to make them look a little bit more realistic. So that's working on your pressure and how much pressure goes into the bag. And it's a pretty nice way to practice, because this one's a little bit more forgiving than, let's say, if you were working on a cake and really needed some perfect pressuring going on. This is a nice way for you to just start doing some pressure royal icing piping. And you're working with, I like when I'm doing my scroll work to do a rub out type of consistency. And what that means is that I put it on a non-grease mat that has never been anywhere near any type of fat ever. And I use a spatula that has never been used on or with any type of fat. And I, instead of folding it in a cup or a bowl, I'm folding it and pushing it against my work surface, so I won't get as many air bubbles, and I won't have to worry about that when you're doing a lot of scroll piping, especially if you're working with over piping, Edwardian style piping, or your Lambeth piping. You don't want to get a ton of air bubbles in there, or even a wet on wet, which I have shown. You don't want air bubbles in there either, and it's a fast way to get those air bubbles under control. Can I guarantee you'll never have an air bubble? No. But it will limit your air bubbles. So it's a nice way to go ahead, and I will mix my color in. And then, depending on the consistency, I'll either add my water slowly, cooled boiled water. I have found if I take my cooled down boiled water and actually put it in the refrigerator just to get it chilled, my royal icing tends to work a little bit better, and it stays for me a little bit better. I get a little bit longer time to work with it. So you might want to try that trick too. Just take your cool boiled water, put it in a spray bottle, a cup, something very clean that you've only, worked with food, and put it in the refrigerator for maybe, depending on your refrigerator, 30 minutes to 45 minutes, and get it nice and cold. And then go ahead and add it into your icing. So now we're going to add the holly berries, and I am working with a bead consistency. And what that means is that I don't have to worry about taking down the peaks of these beads. They should just pretty much round out by themselves. And this would be more like a, depending on where you live, maybe 15-second consistency icing. You can go ahead and work with your medium icing if you want, and then take a little brush to take out those points. I'm going to add a few more leaves in. I noticed over here I don't have enough leaves. Alright, so I noticed here that I just don't have enough leaves going on. It's a little bit boring. I'm going to be really careful because my beads are still quite wet. But this is easier for me if I go ahead and use a round out consistency for my beads. I don't have to worry so much if they're going to have gigantic points sticking on them, or if I have to take them down. I can work a little bit faster. Have all your icing ready and in your bags, whether they're plastic bags or parchment bags. I like to label my colors only because I'm working with mostly number 2 tips, except for the snow, which will be coming in a little bit, and that'll be a 1.5. And when I'm doing my color, if I haven't labeled my bag, I can't see the number underneath the parchment cone. And it would be a shame to do all this work and make all these colors and find out I have the wrong tip on there. So I just go ahead and label them. It makes my job 10 times easier. So if you see a little graphite mark on my bag, that's my label saying bead, or it'll say green or snow, depending on how I decided to label it that day. Sometimes I'll label it with the number of the tip that I'm doing. In this case, like I said, I was working with the same numbers. Holly berries tend to be in clusters of 3, or at least that's how I always see them. And they seem to have a nice look to them if I'm using an odd number of holly berries. I'm just kind of putting them by the leaves. Like I said, there's no rhyme or reason. You can make your design however you want. You kind of want to lift your bag up a little bit above where you're piping to get that nice rounded bead. And even with my bead consistency, I can see I'm starting to get a little bit of pointage going on. So I'm going to go down and do what I said I want to do. And I'll just round that out just a smidge. So my beads are on. What we have left is our snow and putting our flowers on. I'm going to go ahead and do our snow because, well, actually I'm going to do our flowers. I'm going to bring them in. These are some gum paste flowers I've pre-done, and I've explained this before in the past, how to make 5 blossom flowers. So here we have a little bud. I'm just putting a little bit of my royal icing on my bud, and I'm going to throw him right about there. I'm going to use my little dot tool to make sure he's stuck on in there. Nice and tight. My icing is still a little bit wet. You could wait until your icing dries. I find it's easier to do it when it's wet, as long as I'm really careful and I don't smush my design. I lost the back of the bud, but that'll be okay. No one will know it's a bud. So we'll get him on. Put him where we want. And then we'll get our flowers on. Our open 5 blossoms, and this is why I said I wasn't too concerned about the bottom down here. So I'm going to put these on. And you can do as many or as little as you want of the flowers. I think for time's sake, I'm just going to do those 3 for right now. I might add some more in later. And I'm just going to put a little bit of that yellow icing and bring up a teardrop, making some stamens inside there. And all I'm doing is coming close down to my flower and bringing that pressure up and then releasing. I do have a tutorial explaining how to make these little flowers if you want to see that. So we're going to add on our snow. Put these away. And all we want to do, and this is a 1.5, so it's smaller than my tree trunk, is kind of make that zigzag motion with very light pressure. So it just looks like a little bit of snow. He doesn't want to release. Got on, fell onto our bark. And you can decide how you want that to lay and where you want that to go. If you have not done this before, I would tell you to do your snow before you put your leaves on. I mean, your flowers on and your little um, buds. It might make it easier for you. You don't want to hit your bud. A little more snow right there. And then I'm going to go into my little buds and kind of the same motion that I did with the stamens. I'm going to do, if I have enough green in here, yes I do, I just need to push it down. I'm just going to make sure to keep your tips nice and clean. I always have a rag by me. I'm just going to kind of pull up and give the illusion of a little calyx on there. And that way you can't see my little pinch from my hands when I make these buds. Okay. And then the last thing you're going to do is just make, see, that's what I'm talking about. You need to be careful. Just make some snow dots coming down from the sky. They don't have to be the same size. It's snowflakes. They never look the same. I don't mean to get quiet. I'm kind of concentrating on the snow here. And these would be wonderful for place settings at your holiday table, or in a little bag with a cute gold or silver tie. Gold maybe because you've got the yellow flame going on. To give to your guests as they're leaving, or if you've been invited somewhere to bring to somebody to say thank you. And that's it. In a very short period of time, we've made a beautiful, elegant cookie.